of the humble warrior today, and we will start on our mats in a seated position. You all are welcome to ask me any questions afterwards, but we're going to go ahead and just jump right in. That way we can get through the whole sequence. And the theme that we'll be focused on today is heart opening and shoulder releasing. So if you need a strap or blocks or anything that you find helpful in your practice, definitely go ahead and have those by your mat. And I do tend to speak with a lower tone, so I will try to make my voice a bit louder for us today. So if everyone could go ahead and meet on our mat in a seated position. Right. So if you can do crisscross, if that works for you, and take your palms and rest those on your knees. And I'll invite you to close your eyes after you've found a really comfortable seated position for yourself and relax your arms. And let's just center into our practice today. I'm sure we've all been running around different spaces, hopefully getting some outside time, spending time with those that we care about, or looking forward to doing that after this evening. Okay. So after you close your eyes, just let your body be held by your mat and then breathe slowly in and then out. Breathe in through our nose, out through our mouth. And allow your breath to help you find your center. This is where we are now. Being present with our body, being present with our team. And you can start gently swaying from side to side. We're going to move into creating some space in our neck. And so if you want to lean your right ear down to your shoulder. And we're going to do some neck rolls. So as you roll your neck forward, exhale, and then inhale as you roll your neck back into a circle. And we'll do that 3 times on each side. So again, exhale as you arm forward. Inhale as you go around the back. And just feel any places where you have tension. And I invite you to move as slow or as quickly as feels good for you. And release any of that. Sitting at a computer or walking around, whatever it is for you. We all have that tension in there. Okay, and we're gonna do the same on the left side now. So take your left ear and lean it to your left shoulder. Then I invite you to exhale as you roll your neck to the back and inhale. Again, we'll do that 3 times. Inhale towards the back. Exhale to the front. Right. And as we meet back up in our seated position, your eyes can still be closed, they can be open, whatever feels best for you. And we're going to do some slow shoulder rolls to open up, start getting warmed up. You can keep your knees on your hands on your knees. I like to kind of pull my chest up a bit as I roll my shoulders back. We'll do the 3 of those. Get out any pops, any stresses. Okay, and then we're going to go ahead and we'll roll forward 3 times. 1, 2, 3. All right. And we're going to go ahead and move into our cat and cow in our seated position. So as we move into our cat-cow again, your hands are on your knees, and we'll pull our shoulders back and our chest up and really create some space there. Allow your heart to open. Raise your chin and your chest up, your forehead up to the sky. And as you exhale, round that spine down. Bring your chin to your chest. Release all that breath. And then pull yourself back up. Those shoulders, drop them back. Open up your chest. Taking a big, deep breath. Okay, and then we'll release one more time. Chin to our chest. Spine rounded. Drop those shoulders. And then a big inhale again. Try to keep that core engaged and put those shoulders back. Big, deep breath. And then we'll release that one more time and go ahead and round down, chin to our chest. And release all that breath. And then we'll come back up to our relaxed seated position. And release your arms. Wiggle out anything that you feel like you still have there. Okay. All right. And now that we've warmed up some, I will invite everyone to meet me in tabletop on their mat. Go ahead and place your palms down in front of you. Come up to your knees and try to keep a neutral spine. So we don't want to be arching our tailbone up too much or leaning too much into our shoulders. Find a space that feels good for you. And we're going to move into thread the needle. So shake out anything that you need to, any of your toes, any of your last movements. And then I'm going to invite you to take your right arm and reach it up above to the sky, and then thread it underneath behind your left hand. Bring your right shoulder all the way down to the ground, your ear down to the ground. And then we'll hold that for 5 breaths. So be mindful to not lean too much into your shoulder or into your ear. We want to be holding some of our weight in our hips and balanced in our palms. And just really slowly inhale, exhale, fill that space in between your shoulder blades. All right, our last round of breath. Inhale. And as you exhale, use your left palm to push yourself up, give yourself some strength, and bring that right arm up above you to release any of that tension. And bring your right arm back down to the mat. And you'll be in relaxed tabletop again. Okay, and then we'll do the same with the other side. So take that left arm and reach it up above your head. And then we're going to slowly thread it through. Take your time, let your body warm up to this. So you'll drop your right shoulder, your right ear to the ground. And allow your knees to help you find balance here. Find where it's comfortable for you, where you feel good. And then take in those 5 rounds of breath. Continuing to use your right hand, and the left hand's more relaxed. So inhale, exhale, and fill that space in between those shoulder blades. We can get so tight there during and throughout our day. So really allow that to open up, because it'll complement our postures later in our sequence. All right, last inhale. As you exhale, use that right arm to push yourself up and bring that left arm back up above you. And then meet it back down on the mat, and we'll be in tabletop again. All right, and then as we come back to tabletop, we're going to take our toes, flip them under, and then we'll push up into our first downward facing dog. So allow your shoulders to drop and your arms to support you. We want our body weight evenly between our arms and our legs. Those hips up in the air. And you can pedal out your feet. Give your knees some space here. You can drop your heels if that's available to you. I'm still usually around my toes. Those calves can get tight sometimes. Just listen to what your body needs from you. All right. And see if you can balance that weight between your arms and your legs evenly. And then I'll invite you to meet me at the top of your mat. And we'll be in forward fold here. And as you're in forward fold, allow the top part of your body to hang. And we'll be moving into ragdoll. So clasp your elbows. And keeping those toes and those feet planted firmly. Relying on your legs for your balance. Just allow yourself to hang. You can sway if that feels good for you. And then just to keep ourselves even, let's go ahead and switch those elbows that we're holding. So take your arms, release, and swap the hands and elbows. All right, and on our next inhale, we're gonna halfway lift. And here, I like to take my palms and I'll kind of push my hips away right at the crease. That helps me open up for the day. And then we'll exhale and we'll fold back down. So bringing our palms down to the ground. And then we can sweep our arms open wide and we'll rise all the way up into mountain pose with our arms up above our head. And you can bring those down into a cactus. All right, and then we're gonna sweep back down into a forward fold as we exhale. Inhale, we're gonna halfway lift. And we're gonna exhale with our palms down back on our mat, and we'll step back. You can step back with your left foot, your right foot, whatever feels good for you. And we're gonna drop down to our knees, chest, and then chin. And I'll invite you to rise up into an upward facing dog, which will hinge at your hips. Or if you would like to do cobra, just pull that chest forward, chin high and mighty, head back. Make sure we're not leaning over into our shoulders. And allow yourself to feel that. And then we'll go ahead and take our palms and push on our mats nice and strong, and we'll do our downward facing dog. And you can pedal those knees out again. Find that balance. Spread your feet a bit further apart, or your hands, whatever feels good for you. All right. And then we're gonna step and we'll meet at the top of our mat again. And we'll inhale, halfway lift. Exhale, fold back down. And then inhale, we'll sweep our arms open wide as we rise all the way back up into mountain. And then bring your arms back down into cactus. And we'll lower back down as we exhale. And as you're in your forward fold, we're gonna sweep open one more big good time. Sweep all the way open, arms up above our head. Bring your palms together. And meet me with your palms at heart center. And you can pedal your feet out here, sway if you need to, roll those shoulders. Okay. We're going to go ahead and move into our next pose, which is chair pose. So make sure you've got those feet planted firmly. Sweep your arms open, up above you, and find your balance here. We'll engage our core and sit as low as comfortable for you. Feel what your body wants you to feel. Use those arms to help you balance. Sit down a little bit further if you can. And then we'll reach all the way back up and exhale and fold down. Inhale, halfway lift. Exhale all the way back, our hands down to the mat. And we're going to step back into our downward facing dog. Right, and I'll invite you to take that right foot up above your head. And we'll step it all the way through to meet in between your palms. We'll go ahead and rise up into warrior. So use your arms to rise up. Find your balance. I'm finding mine here too. Okay. All right. And so as we are in our warrior one, want to take that left foot, kind of turn it out. And as we move into our humble warrior pose, sometimes it is helpful to take that right foot and widen it just a bit. I found that helps me have more balance. So we will move from our arms up above our heads and meet our hands in the back and clasp them. Drop your shoulders down. Open your chest up. And then I'll invite you to lean forward. Try not to pull your shoulders up to your ears. Our bodies want to do that sometimes. But lean forward into your humble warrior. And we'll hold that for 3 breaths. So inhale, exhale, and you should really feel that in your right thigh right there, and your hip, but it shouldn't be painful. So if it is, try to find some space. All right, and as we begin to rise up, keep our chest up high, bring our arms up above. We'll meet back in warrior one. And then we're going to come back down to our mats, place our palms on the ground. Okay, step that right foot back, and we'll meet back into downward dog. Pedal those feet out, and we're going to get ready for our left side. All right, so take that left leg up into the air, and then beat it between your palms. And then go ahead and rise up into warrior one. And again, same as the other side, find your feet positions, take that right foot back, open it up some. And you can take that left foot and kind of heel toe it to the left as you open up for your warrior one as we move into humble warrior. So to move back into humble warrior, just like the other side, bring those arms behind your back and interlace your fingers. Your shoulders should be dropped back, your chest nice and open, and we'll go ahead and lean forward into our humble warrior. And we'll hold this for 3 breaths. So inhale and exhale. And try to balance that weight between your left and your right foot. And it's okay if you need to readjust those hands at all. We're all still learning and growing. And really feel that power that you have in the left back of your thigh. All right, and our last inhale and exhale. And then go ahead and rise back up into warrior one. One big inhale, and on your exhale, go ahead and lower your palms down to your mat. Bring that left foot back, and we'll go ahead and lower and release. Let your mat hold you, knees, chest, chin. And then you can come up into the upward facing dog or cobra. whatever feels best for you. Okay. And then we'll move back up into our downward facing dog again. And bring that right leg up above you. And then pull it through. Take a big step and allow that foot to get in between your two palms. And we're going to rise back up to warrior one. And for this one, we're going to do reverse warrior. So open your palms or open your arms wide, your right arm reaching forward, your left arm reaching back. Flip your palms. And let your right arm come up above your head while your left arm reaches back. Try to make sure you've still got your good lunge position. We're going to reverse warrior. Hold. 1, 2, 3. Great job. Okay, we'll go back into taking our arms back down to the ground to meet our mat. Step that right leg back. Bring our knees, chest, chin, and come up into cobra or upward facing dog. And we'll move back into our downward facing dog. Step those legs out. Okay, and then put your left leg up in the air. And we're going to pull it all the way through into a good lunge position. And as we move into warrior one, we'll open up above, our arms up above our head. Your right foot back. Okay, and then you'll take your left arm over top of your left leg, right arm behind you, and flip your palms. Left arm comes up above your head, right arm falls down the back of your right leg. And really open up that chest. Take in 3 deep breaths. Feel your power and your strength. Bodies are so strong. All right, and then we'll bring our arms back up and kind of windmill those down, meeting our palms on our mat, and step back down. Left foot meets right foot. We're going to lower to knees, chest, chin. And then again, our cobra, upward facing dog, whatever you've picked today. Lower that out. And then we'll meet back up into our tabletop position. Okay. And feel free to take some space here. You can rock to the side. You can move your knees around, try to give yourself some space. All right. And we're going to do some body rolls here just to really open up our hips, open up our back, thank our bodies for what we just allowed it to do. And so what I mean by body roll is we're going to move into a circular motion with our right elbows bent, kind of moving down if you can see me. So from tabletop, moving into a circular motion. And you should feel that in your hips, you should feel that in your shoulders. And go ahead and swap and move to our left shoulders, our left body roll. Okay. We'll do 3 of those. And we'll meet back in tabletop. All right. And so here, I want to invite you to move down into our puppy pose. And so to move into puppy pose, bring your palms down to your elbows. Keep that hip up in the air. You can widen your knees if you need to. Bring them closer together if that feels good for you. And lower that forehead to the ground and your arms out extended out in front of you. And release that deep exhale. Allow your mat to hold you here. You can rock your forehead from side to side. Nice third eye massage. And then from puppy pose, come up to your elbows and find your way back into child's pose, however that feels good for you. So you'll widen your knees and allow your hips to sit back onto the heels of your feet, reaching those arms out, not forcefully, but just allowing them to reach forward. And that forehead rested on the ground. We'll rock back and forth. And really allow your body to open and relax here. Allow your neck and your shoulders to relax. You can wiggle your fingers. Take any pressure off your elbows. Lower those hips more if you can. And then we'll pull ourselves slowly back up into tabletop. And we're going to meet back how we started with our threading of the needle. And so we're going to take our right arm up above our head and look up to the ceiling now that we've opened up our neck and our shoulders, and thread that right hand behind the left. We've been here before, the right shoulder down, right ear to the ground. Balance your weight. Don't collapse into your ear or your shoulder. Just allow the mat to support you. 3 deep breaths. All right. Use that left arm to push yourself up. Bring that right arm up above and bring it back down to your mat. And we're going to move into the left side. So we'll be in tabletop. Take that left arm up above your head. Reach, turn your neck if you can. Look up to the ceiling. Take that left hand, thread it behind your right. And again, we've been here before. Right shoulder to the ground. Left shoulder to the ground. Left ear to the ground. We're going to take in 3 deep breaths. And use those breaths to find your space. This is your practice and what feels good for you. So if you've got weight on your shoulder too much, it doesn't feel good for you, wiggle that out and find where you can balance more. You can spread your knees a bit more. Use your hips to pull your bottom back. Okay. And then take that right arm, push your shoulder back up, take that left arm up above you, and then come back down. And we'll be back in tabletop. Okay. And if you could meet me back into a seated position on your mat where we started. We'll take both hands and we're going to wrap them. And so go ahead and raise your arms up. Cross one in front of the other. One palm will be facing you, one will be facing outwardly. This one's a hard one to describe sometimes, but we're doing the eagle wrap if you know what that is. If not, hopefully you can see your camera. Okay. Okay. There we go. So arms, elbows crossing over, palms together. And you can lower here if that's too much on your shoulders. You could raise here if you want to get more space. Whatever feels good for you, as always. And we'll hold that 1, 2, 3, and then release. Open your arms up wide, find your space there. And then we'll swap and do the reverse. Okay. Do that again. Okay. So your right arm should be, or your right elbow should be atop your left one, palms together. And again, you can lower your elbows here if that's too much pressure. If you want to push it a little bit, you can. You can raise your arms up. Make sure you're showing your body gratitude and listening to the message it's telling you. But that should be a really good shoulder blade stretch for you. Still engaging your core. Inhale. Exhale. And then release. Okay, and you can open your arms up wide here, up above your head. Lower them back down. And then I'll invite you to lie down on your mat. With your legs outstretched. We're going to put our full body out. Extend those toes, reach them all the way out. Take your arms up above your head. Give a full body stretch here. And then release that. All right. And then I'll invite you to bring both of your knees up to your chest. And allow yourself to rock from side to side. Feeling that in your thighs and your hips, your shoulders. Okay. And then if you can take your left leg and push it down, we're going to take that right leg and lay it over our left leg. Take that right arm out to your right side. You can cactus it up if that feels better for you. You can reach it out right straight. Left arm's out. And try to keep that right shoulder down to the ground if you can. And take in a deep, deep breath. 1, 2, 3. And then release that. We're going to take our right knee back up to our chest. You can use your right hand here to pull that back open. And then bring your left knee back up to your chest. So you'll have both knees, and then rock that out. Okay, and then this time we're going to keep our left knee. You can grab onto it with your palms and drop that right knee all the way extended out, or the right leg all the way extended out. And take that left knee and lay it over top of your right or your left knee should meet the ground to your right. Take your left arm out. Again, you can extend it straight. You can cactus it, whatever feels good for you. And try to keep that left shoulder blade down to the ground. And really feel that opening. You should feel that in your lower back. You should feel that in your left back of your thigh, your neck, and just release. A big deep breath. So hold, 2, 3, and then release that. And we'll go ahead and take that left knee back over, bring it up to our chest, bring our right knee back up to our chest as well. And again, just rock from side to side here. And then lower your legs all the way out. You can reach your arms right up above you again. Take up all the space that you need. Allow yourself to starfish your legs out if you want, your arms. Take up all the space that you need. Right. And one more big stretch, so our toes pointing down, our heels now pointing down while we stretch out our toes. Reach your arms up as long and tall as you can. Big, big activated stretch. And then on 3, we'll all release that together. 1, 2, 3. And allow your mat to just hold you, ground into the energy. Show your body grace and gratitude for carrying you through this practice today. Move any last minute wiggles that you need to. And then I'll invite you to move into Shavasana. So your arms can be down by your side, palms up. Find a little bit of space in between your legs. You can bring them together. And just find stillness here. And as you take in a deep inhale, see if there's anywhere in your body where you might need to release more. Our shoulders just carry us through so much. Our hips, our hands, our palms, our heels and our toes, our minds, our breath. So we'll start at the top of our head. Allow your mind to roam and then find solace in focusing on nothing in particular. Feel the breath come up through your nose and then release that out through your mouth. Allow your shoulder blades and your shoulders to fall to the floor. Any wiggles that you need to find. Any tension that needs to be released. Moving down and through our heart. We did so many heart openers today and allowing that energy to flow through us. Pulsing down through our arms and our fingertips and allowing our bodies to feel that energy that we activated and that we show gratitude to our bodies for having, connecting to the earth, and continuing to move that energy down and through our waist, our hips, rocking, finding that comfortable spot for your tailbone, for your hips to relax, the space that you need, and continue to push that energy that you feel down and through your thighs. Release your knees, your calves, and continue to move that energy down into your heels and release it out through your toes. You can extend them open, you can push them down, push your heels out. And then we're going to take a moment to just relax here. And as we all find our silence, I will too. And I invite you to just connect with your breath in this moment. And we'll do 10 counts at your own pace. All right, and as you take your last breath, whenever you get there, no rush, take your time. We will all meet back up in seated position. You can roll to your right side to pull yourself back up. You can allow your body to pull yourself forward to your knees. We'll meet back in our seated position. Okay, and as we all are back in our seated position, or whenever you find yourself in your seated position, allow those palms to rest on your knees. You can open them up to the ceiling. Keep that spine nice and long, your tailbone connected to the ground. And really feel that breath come all the way up through your nose and reach your forehead. And allow that breath to fill up your chest. And allow it to move through you. And thank your body and show it gratitude for pulling you through your day today, making sure that you could show up in this space today on your journey and the energy that you bring and that you share with others. I'll invite you to close your eyes as you visualize those happy moments that you found throughout your day, or those moments that you're looking forward to this evening or this week. Everyone is worthy of love and acceptance. And when we give that to ourselves, we give that to the world. And we increase that harmony that we can all feel and resonate with. I invite you to take your palms up and rise up over your head. Bring your palms together. And then we'll meet in our heart space. Thank you all so much for letting me share this practice with you today and sharing your time and energy with me. Namaste. All right.
All right. Thank you so much, Jenny. I guess I can stop spotlighting you for a minute. All right, everybody. What did everybody notice, or how's everybody feeling about that practice?
I like that it was always an invitation and that there were lots of different alterations that she gave while she was teaching it.
Yeah, so you kind of see that piece, right, of being able to incorporate that. I'll say I was going to ask this as a question, but you've seen that she had her notes there in front of her, right? It wasn't distracting. It wasn't, anything like that. So, you don't have to worry about that either, right? It just kind of flowed. It was an open invitation, flowed really good. So thanks, Don. Go ahead, Christina. Go ahead.
I
Oh,
thought the pacing was really, it was perfect for me. I don't know for everyone else, but I thought the pacing was just perfect.
yeah,
It wasn't too long in a pose, it wasn't too short in a pose, and I was able to get in and out of them like really easily.
yeah,
She did
so
a good
kind
job.
of, so getting in and out of the poses really easily, and definitely the flow, right? Seemed to flow really well. Let's see, Patty, I'll get to you next. I think I heard Brett chime in first. Go ahead,
You can
Brett.
do Patty first.
Okay,
Go ahead,
all right, go
Patty.
ahead. Go ahead, Patty.
Hi, thanks, Brett. Mine's more personal. Like I've realized just how short my whole body is, and like my arms and my legs just don't quite twist the way she was. And I was I was almost gonna cry because I was like, oh my God, I'm not doing it right because I'm too short.
No, that is exactly why it's all an invitation, right? Is sometimes there's certain poses that we want to do, certain poses that we don't. I will tell you right now, I hate downward facing dog with a passion. That's my personal, it's not like I hate it as a pose or I hate it in yoga. No, I personally hate downward facing dog, and I have no reason to besides, it just seems like you're always in downward facing dog, so I get tired of it. Um, but also it's genuinely because I have a long torso is why I hate downward facing dog. I have such a long torso that it keeps me in a awkward place. So I hate downward facing dog. So our body types definitely play a huge role in what we do. So I think that's huge to kind of know, Patty, and everybody on here, right? Is we need to be able to, and I think she said something along these lines towards the end is, accept your body with grace, right? And that also, I would expand that to say, accept your limitations with grace, because I think that's part of yoga as well. Go ahead, Brett.
So first of all, I'm really happy that you said you're not a fan of downward facing dog, because I'm gonna take that out of my sequence now.
That's right. That's right.
But no, actually, I thought like I came in late because I was traveling, but when I came in, I thought not only was the directions very clear, but and this is really key because I've been to yoga classes, the voice and cadence was very soothing and directive. Like it was just a nice flow. And I feel like that's actually kind of part of it too, is that delivering of the message. And I think that's really key is when you're comfortable with what you're giving instruction on, is that you can be in that role and keep it calm and be a place of centering.
Absolutely. Right. I thought the tone was great. I think Christina or whoever, I think it was Christina, mentioned the pace of it was really good, right? You weren't in poses too long. All of those things play into everything that we do. Um, and I did want to add, again, that Jenny had her notes in front of her, right? She had her sequence laid out. I know I told you all, even to this day, I have my sequence typically in front of me, even if it's not the entire sequence, right? I might have some bullet points that has kind of evolved to at this point, but all in all, I tend to have my notes there in front of me, which helps you stay on pace, right? If you're trying to go solely based on what's in your head, in my opinion, or at least in my experience, my personal experience, is I forget things. I go too fast, right? As if I'm in my head, then that's what I'm kind of doing. I'm more focused on my head than what's on the paper in front of me. So I always find that very good. Yeah, go ahead, Karen.
So I found it a little challenging. Like I started sweating and I was like, when am I allowed to take something to drink? Um, so understanding, I mean, this is all very new for me. So understanding like, is it acceptable to take a break? And then she mentioned earlier that, we had the strap and the bolsters, but I didn't know how to use them. Like I saw a couple of places it would have been beneficial, um, and how she, adjusted things, but I was kind of lost with,
With the
kind of that.
props.
Am I allowed to change things? Can I have some water?
Right. Yeah,
That
yeah.
makes sense.
I feel like no, you can't have water and you have to listen to everything she says, right? So, but no, absolutely, right? I feel like and I may have mentioned this in this class too, right? Whenever I go to a yoga class, if I go to a yoga class, I tend to do my own thing, which sometimes throws throws the instructors off a little bit, right? Because I don't like downward dog. So if they're sitting in downward dog for like 5 minutes or they keep getting back into it, I'm probably not going to sit in downward dog, right? I'm going to do something different. Um, and I would most certainly say always listen to your body, right? So if your body's saying that you need more water, take a water break, right? And I feel like you could easily set that up for your class, um, in that sense, right? To say in this practice, we're going to be listening to our body, because that's the biggest key that we want people to really do in yoga. We want them to listen to their body. So inside of that, if they're thirsty, if they give them the invite to say, hey, if you're doing a forward fold and you feel like your hamstrings are too tight, it might be a good place to go ahead and grab a strap to do that, and or maybe put a blanket underneath the backs of your feet, so that would make it easier as well. So I do think, to piggyback off what Karen was saying, was, we can always make sure that people in our classes know that water is one of the most vital things that we need, maybe outside of breath, right? So if you need it, take a break for it, just like you can for a breath, right? If you need to catch your breath, if you're starting to sweat, and it's just not something you want to be a part of, give them the invitation to kind of sit back in child's pose is usually what I do. And I think I may have said that, right? Some of the different poses that you can kind of sit in while everybody else is practicing. And I think child's pose is definitely one of those poses. So yeah, so thank you for that, Karen. That's really good. Definitely on the novice side, as we're kind of building our practices and getting familiar with these things, those are definitely things to keep in mind. And every single time that you go to a yoga class now, you should not be looking at that yoga class anymore. Well, maybe you should at some point, but you should never be looking at that yoga class as you're there as a participant. You should almost be there to evaluate how they're teaching yoga, and then that way you can take notes back for yourself from here on out, because that's really important, right? Is we need to be able to evaluate other people's practices, but more importantly than evaluating it, it's really finding the strengths that came out of that you would really want to do, and are potentially, maybe something that might enhance your practice. Like for Karen, it would be to make sure that we say, if you need a drink of water, just like catching your breath, please stop what you need and get your water, right? So
For me, I guess it was just I appreciate the acknowledgement there, and Jenny as well. I just, again, very, very novice. I didn't want to miss like the next thing, because it was so, we do one step to the next. And I was really fearful that I was, and here I write about this a lot too. Charles, do you see that?
yeah.
I'm really fearful that I was going to miss a piece of it. And I really liked how she kept, feel, thank your body, give it gratitude, stuff like that. So that kind of helped bring me back, but I was just afraid I was going to miss like the key points. You always leave, for that teaching, that training, you always leave to go to the bathroom right as they say that most important thing. So that's what I was worried that I was going to miss, like the peak kind of thing.
Right. No, that's fair. And I think that's definitely part of being human at that point, right? Is a lot of times we don't want to step away from anything, right? It's almost like that kid who doesn't want to leave and ends up, um, you know, going completely crazy doing the pee dance, and they're too busy sitting there, not even paying attention at that point, right? They got to go to the bathroom so bad. So, just because they don't want to miss anything. Go ahead, Brett.
I was just gonna say I'm feeling a little salty because we had a long day today. So and everyone should know is Karen and I work together all the time, so we have a very give and take relationship with jokes. So just know that comes from a place of love.
Don't worry, his water tomorrow will be extra salty. So
That's right. Absolutely, it will. No, this is great. So I'll say, well, actually, let me ask anything else. I haven't been keeping up with the chat. Some people may have put it in the chat. Self-care first. I think it was great to invest in the mats with the poses. Very helpful. Great. The flow was nice, but it was a little fast for me. Oh, that was Karen too. A little bit fast. Yeah, I will say, the speed and those different things of a yoga practice, right, is this one was probably very much more on the yin side of yoga, right? Whereas like Emily and some of the other folks that like the hot yoga and the fast-paced yoga, right? We probably have like Ashtanga yoga that would be on this extreme with hot yoga, and then on this extreme we'd have yin yoga. And I would say kind of what Jenny taught was probably on this side, not all the way over with yin yoga, because a lot of times in yin yoga you actually stay in some of these poses for minutes, right, at the time. So for those folks who felt like it was a little bit too slow, I would say don't go to a yin yoga class for sure, because you'll probably lose your mind. Your monkey mind will be all over the place. And usually that's what it is, right? Is whenever we're in these different speed places, is if you have a very fast, active mind, then I would say fast-paced yoga is probably better, right? It'll keep your mind distracted. You won't be sitting there ruminating like Karen was about like not missing a pose, but really wanted to get a drink of water, right? Those different things, right? You wouldn't have that monkey mind going on. But the slower that it goes, the more often that the mind gets to wander, right? IN guard, yeah, thanks for adding that, Christina. The IN guard keeps in there as well. And I think I may have shared this before, but with Iyengar style yoga, they actually have an entire wall that has like ropes on it for props and different things like that to stay in poses for a while. So once you get in some of those poses, you don't want to get out of them pretty fast. So definitely another one that kind of keeps you in there. Let's see, anything else as far as this practice went that you would like to say? I'll add that I felt like the pace was really, really good. I feel like the tone was really, really good. I felt like the sequencing and the flow flowed really well into the peak pose, which now I can't even remember what it was. It was the humble warrior. That's right. The humble warrior was really the peak pose here. And then I also felt like she intertwined yoga sutras, even though she didn't say it, right? Like approach your body with grace. Be the one Karen example. Oh gosh, that's a whole other debate there. But I felt like this was a really good flow from that standpoint. Another thing that I'll say that I noticed, that I think you all hopefully noticed and will start incorporating, is she used her own language a lot of the times around different poses and things like that. Of course, the only thing that's sticking in my mind now is the cactusy hands, right? Or the cactusy arms. I forget how she said it, especially at the end. She kind of was flowing with the cactus style arms whenever she was laying on her back. And I feel like she used a different word besides cactus. It was like cactusy or something like that, right? And I think those are the things that makes our practice even more unique and more unique to us, right? Is whenever we can start adding in our own verbiage and different things like that as well. So definitely, I thought it was a really good practice. And I was driving the entire time. I literally, me and Brett was at the same place. I literally walked in here whenever she said, now let's sit back up. So I literally just came in, but I got to listen to the entire practice, and definitely appreciate the practice. I appreciate slow practices. I will say I'll probably teach on the ethics day. And whenever I teach, my practice is very much like this as well. So I'm more of a slow yin style yoga person as well. So, all right. Well, let's take a 10-minute break. Everybody get water. Let Karen get some water, since she didn't get any during her practice. And then what we'll do is we'll come back. Let's come back at 5:30, and then we'll pick up the practice from there, or pick up the slides. I don't know why I waved goodbye, but it's not goodbye. I'll see y'all in 7 minutes.
Charlie,
Yes.
I'm going to switch over to my phone really quick to get in my car so I can drive home. So if you're doing anything that has to be, I have to respond to, just kind of shout at me and let me know.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks, Pat.
All right, thanks.
And Charlie, I was just gonna say thanks for kicking butt on the cooking class. I think that it's good. We did good work with that program.
I think so too, man. I definitely appreciate you, everything that you've done with the cooking class, and, starting it up to keeping it going and everything. So thank you. I think it's a pretty nice class.
I understand your sentiment. Have a great
That's
break.
right. That's right. All right. Hopefully everybody is back. I was going to also add congratulations to Dawn for being Counselor of the Year, just FYI. I just also forgot to mention that. I meant to mention that at the beginning as well. So,
It was rigged. Don't get excited, guys.
well, that's what I thought. You know, I voted at least 20 times. You know what I mean? So, so definitely congratulations. Well earned. And then the other thing, so let's go ahead and jump into stress physiology. So today we're going to talk a little bit about stress. For those folks who were in the coaching course, you're probably going to see some of the same slides again, but we're going to dive into it a little bit deeper, just because this is yoga and you need to know this response more. But also, I think a lot of times understanding stress and being able to incorporate this into your yoga sequences and be able to help alleviate some of the stress, we have to know the stress physiology. But also, we have to know what people are going through that's out there as well, right? We have to kind of know what stress is really impacting them and different things like that. So, one thing that I would like to ask you all is, what type of stress do you all deal with in your schools right now? What type of stress is out there, I guess? What are you experiencing? What are you noticing from your schools? Things like that. What is stressful? Test fatigue, definitely this time of year, right? Is getting into test fatigue for sure. At-risk seniors. Okay, absolutely. Anxiety around transitions to new schools. Oh yeah, our poor kids, right? Going in from even just elementary, right? Going from elementary to middle school is such a transition. I feel like it's worse transition than 8th to ninth grade. That 5th to 6th grade is pretty bad. In the work, uncertainty, right? Yeah, definitely the uncertainty within the work that we're doing sometimes. Repetitive behaviors, so kind of the same things over and over, I'm assuming from our kids. Let's see, is there any new stress that's out there for anybody? Inconsistency and favoritism. Okay, there we go. Favoritism is definitely an issue. Inconsistency is definitely an issue across the district as well. Burnout, staff and student burnout. Yeah, students are burnout just as bad during test taking time and just in general, right? I feel like for schools, this is definitely a bad time of the year. Changing staff members' roles. Yeah, that's another big one, right? Is people move on, people, other types of things. Getting ready for the end of the year and being ready for next year, all in the same time, while also not having enough contracted days and hours to be able to get those things done and get prepared for next year, right? It feels like there's never enough time. Or maybe it's that it feels like we're always just 2 steps behind in everything that we do, right? And a lot of times understanding this stress is so important, right? And getting behind the stress, right? And understanding that sometimes with the stress that we have, we cannot change the environment, right? And we can't change the stress a lot of times. And Christina put in there, the parents, right? Parents suddenly realizing they need to be involved out of nowhere, right? It's the end of the year, their kids may be behind, and then now they're asking all these tough questions that they probably should have asked, probably before November, right? Or around November timeframe. So definitely kind of getting in there for sure. LOL and crying. Yeah, both of them, right? Laughing. You're laughing so hard because you're crying. But, I think these are real things that everybody in our district is dealing with, right? I definitely feel the changing of staff and members and roles right now is changing drastically. We've had as a district to make some very challenging decisions and different things like that. And I'll just kind of leave that at that. But that's, something else that we're dealing with, right? Is change that we can't even control, like our insurance changing to people around us either leaving their jobs, being laid off, to just moving to a new district or just retiring, right? Some of it's good, some of it's bad, but these are all the things that it feels like we cannot really necessarily control that makes us feel, you know, like we want to cry and laugh so hard we want to cry, right? Those are the things that really make us want to do that. And then we have these value conflicts that are constantly going off the entire time that these things are going off, right? Every single time a new decision is made that we had no control over, no input, and these types of things are happening all around us. And then what happens is we end up having stress related around it. And then with that stress, we end up diving into different types of hormones that end up getting released because of this, which we'll talk a little bit about later. But all of these things are adding up, and our body's constantly being bombarded with all of this stress and these stress hormones and this reaction in our body. And we don't even know a lot of times whenever that stuff is happening and going on inside of our body. And I think that is also what we can do with yoga. So we're going to talk a little bit about the autonomic nervous system, talk about stress and relaxation responses, chronic stress on the mind and body, right? And what that really means. And hopefully you all will be able to describe all these terms. I don't know if we'll get to cognitive bias. So the reason why I added bias in here, and I know a lot of people from the coaching course got that course already with cognitive bias, is a lot of times stress and bias almost looks alike, right? Especially with the hormones that they release and different things like that. So whenever we have our own biases and we're not acknowledging them and we're not trying to mitigate them, that causes us more stress and harm to our bodies than knowing those biases and trying to mitigate them. And I think it's just really important for us to kind of realize that in the world that we're living in today, right? Is our biases, there's so much bias, there's so much polarization, there's so much everything going on in the world right now that, that is creating an extreme amount of stress for everybody. And that stress is the same stress that you would have if you went and ran a marathon, or if you were stressed out at work, or if there's all kinds of changes happening in your life, right? It's the same stress, and the more that we constantly are doing that, it builds into chronic stress, right? And once we get into chronic stress, there's a lot of things that are happening to our body and can happen to our body long term that will reduce our longevity. And that's the reason why we should be talking about stress a whole lot more than we really do. Lack of information causes anxiety. Absolutely. I personally focus then on what I can positively impact. A lack of information, that's another big one. And how relevant of times is it now to have a lack of information as well, right? Or misinformation even on certain topics that can even fuel that stress as well. So, all right, so let's jump in here. So first we're going to talk about our brain a little bit before we jump into anything, right? And our brains are wired to resist change for our own survival. So whenever we're implementing change inside of a school or somebody's trying to do that, our brains naturally resist that change no matter what. If we say we're going to implement the best wellness program in the world in your school system, probably about 80% of those people are going to resist that change, right? Even if it's positive, people will resist change no matter what, because it is something that we're not used to, and our brains are wired to resist that. And they resist it because it's an energy conserving mechanism. Our brains love habits, right? I know that's definitely critical for us to understand, is our brain loves habits, and anytime we try to break out of those habits, it is a fight in our brain, right, to be able to do that. So then the fight, flight, or freeze response, right, is that habitual response. So once we start to try to change things, even if it is something like that wellness program in your school, and we want every single person to implement something wellness that they love, even, it is going to be a fight, because your brain is automatically going to activate that nervous system that activates your fight, flight, freeze, faints. There's all kinds of F words that we can throw in there of what really happens whenever your brain starts to activate the survival mechanism. And then, advantages to our survival brain is that these responses And these habitual responses, most of the things that we do day in and day out, I want to say it's around 60 to 70% of everything that we do is a habit, right? So if you think about that, getting in your car, starting your car, right? Brushing your teeth, everything almost probably you do every single morning is a habit, not necessarily something that you're thinking about, not necessarily anything, right? So that's part of that survival piece of our brain, because if we had to think about every single thing that we did, one, we probably would never get anything done, or we would never get out of bed because we're sitting there thinking about how we're even going to pull the blanket off of us and put our feet on the ground, right? Those things are all habits that we have and are needed for us to be able to survive. So then whenever we think about our brain and this energy conserving side of our brain, right, our habits, our habitual response does not just exist for our survival, it's just that energy conserving, right? If we had to really think about all the things that we had to just to accomplish anything, we wouldn't really be able to accomplish too many things, right? Because we would be too bogged down in trying to understand how to drive all over again, right? Every single time we got in a car. And if we had to think about it every single time, it would be, it wouldn't be advantageous for humanity. And, whenever we think about that too, that's also how we get into those autopilot mindsets, right? I know probably all of us have at least driven once or twice, and then drove right past our exit, right? Or whatever it is, right? We're kind of on that autopilot mind. And a lot of times that is like we can still carry out tasks because our brain has already made that a habit inside of our brain. New information is processed in the prefrontal core, so in our prefrontal cortex, so that is really up here in this area here. And whenever we think about that, another thing, whenever you hear about traumatic brain injury and things like that, whenever people have issues with their prefrontal cortex, they have a hard time really being able to understand new information, but also they have a hard time with emotions and other things like that because all that lives in this area of your brain. And again, a lot of those are autopilot style things, right? And I think a lot of times we get mad at people because of their initial response to things. But in reality, their initial response isn't necessarily what they think, right? Their initial response is a knee-jerk reaction that was a habitual response. And if we add bias into that whole process, right, bias is also really a habitual response. So if you go off the first thing that you think, it could potentially be full of bias and habitual type of responses, right? So it's just something for us to think about. When we decide an experience is important to remember as a pattern, we repeat it in the future, right? So if it's something that we want to continue to do, if we want to drink coffee every single morning, then we're going to continue to wake up and drink that coffee every single morning. We're going to make a plan for it, and then it's going to be stored in this area of the brain. So, whenever you, if anybody ever seen that movie 50 First Dates, whenever they kept not being able to continue moving past, they really damaged this part of their brain over through here. Because then the process and ability to kind of think past the next step went away, right? So they're not able to create habits anymore. So anyway, this is where it's stored. And whenever we think about the storing of that, then the body moves into our nervous system, right? And whenever we have our nervous system here, we're not going to get into the central nervous system, right, which really controls your spinal cord and your brain. We're going to move over here to the peripheral nervous system, which has two different pieces. But the main one that we're going to focus on that really focuses on the stress hormones and the stress reactions is the autonomic nervous system. So out of the autonomic nervous system, you have the parasympathetic and the sympathetic nervous system. And really, whenever we also think about this nervous system, the biggest thing that this nervous system does is it creates a homeostasis mindset inside of your body. And if something is out of whack, it's going to try to fix it. Also in that mindset, we'll talk about it here in the next slide, but I guess we can go ahead and move to it. But in this slide, right, it kind of starts to show the different areas that are impacted and how they're impacted. So the sympathetic nervous system is always going to respond in a way that creates homeostasis for you to be able to have a fight, flight, or freeze response, right? So they're like, your sympathetic nervous system gets activated, and then it's like, oh man, I got to create a homeostasis mindset for you to be able to run right now, right? Or fight, or whatever it is. So whenever that happens, right, you start having, dilated pupils, you start having salivate, different types of water is really probably leaving your body, all the way down to the bottom, right, to where your bladder really relaxes. And people who have a sympathetic response could end up urinating on themselves. I think we see that in different types of environments and movies and things like that, to where they get so scared that they urinate on themselves. Well, that was a sympathetic response, right? And what I mean by that is, you might see them get scared and they might hunker down, and you might think that might be a parasympathetic response, but in reality, they're so terrified that their body is shutting down, and then they end up urinating on themselves. But then on the other side, right, is the parasympathetic. So this is kind of the rest and relax. So now everything is getting calm, and this is really the state that you kind of want it in, right? And then if you look through here, you have the vagus nerve that kind of goes down through the body. We would talk more about that, because you'll hear a lot of different terms in the yoga world talking about the polyvagal nerve, different things like that, and dorsal inflection and different areas within the body. But all of that has to do with this entire nervous system throughout the entire body. And this actually goes down through the diaphragm, which is also why we focus on breathing, right? Because breathing helps you activate this parasympathetic nervous system, especially if you slow down the breath. But more importantly, whenever we start to notice these types of areas, right, we have this, it really just coordinates all the systems in our body to respond in the way that the brain thinks that you're getting ready to need to respond. So if you feel threatened, then it's starting to release all your fluids. It's getting you ready to be able to run, fight, freeze, whichever one it is. Whereas in your parasympathetic nervous system, this is, I finally made it home, I'm done with classes, everything's good, I'm now going to be able to sit here, right? And then you're kind of in that phase. Does anybody have any questions about this part of the anatomy? The brain, sympathetic, parasympathetic nervous systems, anything? Too easy. So now whenever we think about that, right, everybody's response is completely different. So whenever we think about stress, right, from the very fundamental piece, whenever we get stressed, our brain is going to fight for survival, right? So we're going to be thinking of survival, and then our brain is going to activate one of these two systems, our nervous system, right? And more than likely, if we're stressed, it's going to be this sympathetic nervous system. But whenever we activate it, how do we know when it's going to get activated? And the big thing that we focus on here is the window of tolerance. And everybody has a different window of tolerance, right? So if you look at this, this is arousal, and this is probably longevity, right? So how long your arousal state, and then how long you are aroused for. So whenever we look at this, right, this is the optimal arousal zone. So if you're getting stimulated and you're going along, you can typically maintain within this capacity, right? This is called the window of tolerance. From here to here is your window of tolerance. This is what you can tolerate. Anything that's thrown at you, you can manage that, right? And then whenever you're in a high arousal state, right, what would you would almost say that this would probably be your sympathetic nervous system. So if we had to start adding in the nervous system, you would, if you're in this area, you're probably activating your sympathetic nervous system. If you're down here in this low arousal phase, you're probably activating your parasympathetic nervous system. And then in between here, what you're activating is probably both, just on lower terms and not as engaging to where it's activating and doing all the different things that it is with your body. So again, these are different things, right? And whenever we think about this, whenever we start to activate and get outside of our window of tolerance, the biggest things that we do is defend, we escape, we avoid, and we retaliate. And we see that on a regular basis whenever people get out of that. And I'll start to talk a little bit more about this, right? Is whenever you see this, right? This is someone who is in their window of tolerance, but then they kind of get out of it because they had a flashback of, whatever it was, being hurt as a child or whatever it is, and then you're starting to feel regulated. So now you're in your sympathetic nervous system for a period of time. And that's whenever it gets dangerous. We'll talk more about those hormones later and whenever they get released. But whenever you're living in this state here and you're activating and all these hormones are being released, that's really not good for your body, right? So then what happens is your body starts to feel like you need to do something. So then this person ate for comfort, right? So then once they ate, then they started to have this negative self-talk, like I'm fat and I'm disgusting. I never should have ate that big old bag of M&Ms, whatever it is. And then they fall down. And then now they're in this more of this parasympathetic phase. But again, does this really look like it's a good parasympathetic response, right? I would say no, right? And then we're in this isolation and start to isolate because of these types of things, right? And then we jump back up because now we're having flashbacks, and we're having a sense of rage, and then we come back down because we're having our feelings of shame, and then we jump back up, and now we have this self-directed rage, and then now we're drinking to try to calm all this down, and then now we're having nightmares, right? So here we have this whole window of tolerance. And inside of here, what I wish we could do, and maybe what I'll do in the future, is come in here and kind of talk about the things that you would be feeling inside of your window of tolerance, right? Wouldn't necessarily be shame, but as you're feeling this, right, you're feeling this rage, you may feel some type of relief, right? Because now that you got to release this type of rage and this type of sensation, it might bring you back down into your window of tolerance, and then you might feel relieved, you might feel happy, you might feel different kinds of things in here, and this is where you would see some of those positive emotions. And then more than likely you're probably activating your sympathetic nervous system in these areas, but you're probably also activating your sympathetic nervous system. A lot of times we think sympathetic nervous system is all negative, but it's very much not. If it wasn't for that, we wouldn't be athletes, right? We wouldn't be competitive, we wouldn't be anything like that, because we wouldn't ever activate our sympathetic nervous system. Our sympathetic nervous system serves such a major point that we cannot ever think that it's just always negative. And even in yoga, we're going to be activating people's sympathetic nervous systems, especially for probably Karen in this last practice, right? She didn't have any water. She was stressed because she didn't want to miss the next pose. I bet you at some point her sympathetic nervous system was activated in that yoga practice, right? And was that necessarily bad? I would say no, right? We need that. We need it to help us ask questions, to be curious, and do all those things. So I think it's very important for us to remember that we don't always want to be in our parasympathetic nervous system, because that's not healthy as well. Does anybody have any questions about the window of tolerance? The struggle is real. That's right, Karen. Sorry, I'll stop picking on you now, Karen. I don't mean to keep doing it, but it's just.
I don't mind. I find it humorous. You're good.
Okay, good. Okay, good. But I do think that's a real example. Genuinely, is kind of being confused in the sequence a little bit, and being thirsty, right? Not knowing that you can get a drink. I think that's an easy way to do it. All right. I lost my cursor here. There it is. Okay, so what do you all think of whenever you think of acute stress? Like, what comes to mind? Deadlines. Yeah. A deadline would be a good one, right? If you know that you have to get it done, it'll be acute stress, but it'll be good. Report cards. Yeah. For you, it's probably acute. For the kids, sometimes it's probably chronic. But most certainly, right, is a report card is only a moment in time. So it could cause maybe chronic stress if your report cards are always one direction. and getting worse, but most certainly acute stress, right? It's almost like that point in time can help you with that, or is acute stress. What do you all think of whenever you think of chronic stress? Drop off a student, you don't know what's really going on and have to go by their word until you hear otherwise. Yeah, that could be acute stress and chronic stress for sure. Dealing with the student that you end up having to do that with all the time could end up being chronic stress, but definitely for the short term of dealing with it is most certainly that way. Coworkers, yeah, coworkers could be chronic stress as well. If you work with a bunch of people that you feel like are underperforming and nobody's holding them accountable, or even if your executive team is not, right, or your administrators, I guess is a better way to say that, and nobody's holding them accountable, that can create chronic stress over time. Deaths, divorce, most certainly deaths and divorce could definitely create chronic stress. Um, Sometimes, I won't say all the time, divorce could be chronic stress because divorce typically, I forget what the average divorce is. I used to know that. I want to say it's something like 8 months, right? So you're going through hell for 8 months, right? That is chronic stress for sure. But typically afterwards, for a period of time, you don't feel that stress anymore, right? Once you kind of get past the grief and loss of it all. Teenagers, yeah, freaking teenagers, man. They're always stressful. um, the stress spot on my neck that never seems to go away. Oh man, Victoria, we could definitely probably talk about that, right? As you're holding something inside your body, the body keeps the score, right? So most certainly that stress spot, your body being in pain, right? Chronic pain is what I would add here, is if you have any type of chronic pain, that is an ongoing stress. That's the reason why people with chronic illnesses tend to have higher levels of stress. But more importantly, if you look at that, and we'll talk a little bit about hormones again, like I said later, is hormones will most certainly impact your stress levels. They impact your life. They impact you having things like dementia, Alzheimer's, all kinds of things that it can impact, osteoporosis. Like it can, this stress, if you stay stressed, stress will most certainly, chronic stress will most certainly decrease years off of your life. If you have a chronic illness, the stress that you have on top of your chronic illness, the chronic illness may or may not reduce your longevity, but the stress that you have around that chronic illness will decrease your longevity, right? And I think that's something to think of. And bills. Oh man, bills. Also, right now, bills is probably one of the most stressful things I feel like for people. The cost of everything is going up. I would say people's pay is not going up, right? So inflation is bad. Who knows how these tariffs are going to hit, but inflation's at an all-time high, bills are at an all-time high, and then now we have tariffs that may or may not cause more inflation and more cost. So we got all these unknowns. So I would also add on there, it's the unknowns that also can cause chronic stress over time. And I think now in the political climate that we're in, I think is a good example, right? Is some of these things are kind of stressful. I say kind of, these things are stressful, right? And then that stress over time of not knowing and the back and forth and all these different things that kind of are going on in the government right now can most certainly cause that chronic stress as well. So I think these were all great things, right? But acute stress, right? That threat is immediate and that the need to respond is, man, these are some big words. I should have probably read these words. Instantaneous adrenaline and noradrenaline of the of the gland, and also are called into play. So really what this is saying is acute stress activates your adrenaline and your noradrenaline, right? And this is activated through your adrenal gland. And in that gland, whenever this activates, it releases all over your body, right? I'm sure everybody's heard about adrenaline. And whenever adrenaline is activated, it is most certainly a good thing, right? There's so many different things that can happen. I know people's probably heard of stories of people picking up cars off their loved ones to, just doing extraordinary things that nobody would understand, or even understand how the human body could do it, right? And these are released throughout our body. I will say that is good and bad, right? We need that to happen for that moment, but adrenaline is not necessarily good for our entire body, especially whenever it's released in such a dump, right? And then it takes our body a long time to get rid of that. A lot of times after 15 minutes, people think, oh man, my adrenaline's finally calmed down, but that adrenaline has not left your body. Right. And that's what we got to think about whenever we talk about these hormones, is whenever we talk about these hormones, it's really that we haven't been able to recover from that particular hormone release. And that's what's really causing a lot of that fight, flight, or freeze response, right? So then whenever we get into chronic stress, this is the threat is prolonged and unabated and is usually involves the presence of the blood of cortisol. So what that really means is whenever we're chronically stressed, we're releasing cortisol at a higher level. And what that means in a longer level, right? We're doing it so much. And cortisol is another good hormone that we have, but the more that we release it and the more often that we do it, this is the hormone that has been correlated to increased dementia, increased cognitive issues is what I should say. So it's Alzheimer's, it's dementia, but even some other things of forgetfulness and all these other things. Whenever you have too much cortisol, these things can happen, right? And I think it's important for us to kind of know that, because then it can kind of help us understand the different things. So whenever we look at acute stress, right, new challenges, I think we kind of mentioned some of that before with acute, right? But these are also not bad things, right? To have a new challenge in your life and activate that sympathetic nervous system because you're curious, because you're intrigued about this new challenge, doesn't necessarily mean a bad thing, right? But it also is activating your sympathetic nervous system. But also it's releasing those hormones as well, right? Whenever we think about that piece too. So athletic competition, presentation at work, right? The more that we present at work, right? Maybe we get better at it. For me, I still get nervous every single time I present because, I feel like it's a nerve-provoking thing. The more weight you carry, the more cortisol you produce. Absolutely, right? So that is another big piece. And then imagine that you're having chronic stress on top of the more weight that you have. And every single time you release that cortisol, you're releasing so much more, which creates even more stress on your body that can decrease your longevity. Lifting weights, intermittent fasting, right? I'm sure everybody here has heard of fasting. I don't know if everybody here has done fasting. I have. I find it very stressful and other things, right? It's causing all kinds of stress on our body. Running sprints is another way for acute stress. Here they talk about chronic stress being the drive to work. I'll say I was pretty stressed driving back from the Family Success Center to my house because I didn't know if I was going to make it back. I was sitting there thinking, man, I sure hope Jenny does some more practice because I'm like, oh man, I'm going to be done, right? So annoying boss, if you have an annoying boss, right? Bad work schedule. I think that's another big one that people don't probably think about enough, right? Is if you work a work schedule and you have a long commute to work, then you're probably going to be pretty stressed out on an ongoing basis, right? A difficult spouse, poor sleep habits, navigate our negative friends, right? So all these things can increase. Karen, no comment. That's right. So definitely an annoying boss for Karen. But
Right, Brett?
that's right. That's right.
All right, I'll own it.
Well, some things just don't need to be said. You know what I mean? So in reality, right, these things cause that chronic stress. And what really happens inside of our body is that we have this stress neurological cascade. And what this really means is something happens in the brain, but a lot of times people do not think that whenever stress happens, that there is a neurological response. That neurological response is the stress response that we talked about, right? But then what happens is your body gets impacted in so many different ways whenever you activate that stress response in any way, whether it's a sympathetic or parasympathetic, right? You are activating hormones, you're activating and engaging your organs and all different kinds of things. And a lot of times people think that that is okay. But the more that you do back and forth between parasympathetic and sympathetic, you're creating, stress on these different types of organs, right? From your heart. What do we notice with the heart? It either beats faster or slower. Either way it goes, you're creating change within that heart. Your muscles are contracting or releasing and relaxing, right? So you're creating change within that, right? And your muscles typically are engaged in some way. Whenever they're 100% relaxed, that's not necessarily great either. And then whenever they're also contracted, that's not good either. Now I'll say, if you notice people really stressed out in your school, in your yoga class, whatever it is, progressive muscle relaxation on either side is usually a good tool, right? Just because of this, because you're engaging a lot of these different organs. Your diaphragm, right, which is also why we breathe a lot. Your diaphragm gets impacted either way, because it's either not going to be moving at all, or is completely moving, and any way it goes, it kind of does that. That's right. Stress can be a good and necessary thing. It has to be, right? I don't think God gave us the ability to be stressed for it just to mess with us on a day-to-day basis. I don't think however you think about that, right? I don't think we created something in our body as a response for it just to be good or bad, right? And I think it can be both. I think it can be in between. I think it can be on a complete spectrum, and it definitely depends on the day. Our blood vessels. So this is probably, you see this little arrow here, and this is literally, you can tell I took this from a book, right? So this book is a medical book. And whenever we talk about blood vessels, they talk about this being one of the worst things for stress to really impact, right? Because whenever we think about blood vessels being impacted, right, that's blood restriction, blood flow, different things like that that's happening in our body. So it's one major important thing that happens in the stress neurological cascade as it's rolling down. Skin, typically it's we're usually sweating and different things like that. And then of course the liver gets activated, and even the liver itself, whenever we have different organs, those organs are also releasing different hormones that are happening as well. So anyway, this is, getting you ready for fight, flight, or freeze. These are, all the, these are the muscles that end up getting impacted. And it's just something to kind of think about. The neurological cascade is it happens in our brain, and then our brain then goes out and tells the rest of our body what it's going to do to get prepared for this fight, flight, or freeze response. And then we have the endocrine system, right? And whenever we think about this one we have our brain, the hypothalamus, and the pituitary glands, right, is really what we're looking at here. And whenever we break that down into the adrenal gland, we have these two big words that I wouldn't ever try to say. Cortisol steroids, right, which is really cortisol, and then adrenaline. So whenever we activate the adrenal gland, we're activating one of these two hormones. And again, I don't want to say anything like positive or bad, but no matter which one we're releasing, it can cause damage to all of those organs that we talked about before on the last slide. But again, this helps us get ready and prepared for the fight, flight, or freeze response that we're getting ready to have. And all this happens in seconds, which I also find, not even seconds, milliseconds, right? I also find interesting as well. But again, whenever we think about this type of system and all these different glands all over our bodies, and now they're releasing different style or different hormones that are good and bad for our body, yoga can also help us release those hormones from our bodies, right? And different things like that by working them off. So another thing that we can kind of do and relate this back to yoga is whenever we notice this, a lot of times exercise out of yoga, the physical exercise. I know yoga is so much more than just exercise, can really help us get rid of a lot of these different hormones and other things, or maybe I shouldn't say get rid of, but maybe just work them out into our body like it naturally does. And then we have the immunologicology, but really just the immune side of things, right? And whenever we think about the immune side of things, this is really where it gets impacted more, is now we have a lot of inflammation in our body because we're having these stress responses and we're maintaining these hormones. We're not doing anything to maintain our stress. And then now we're moving into immunological disorders, right? And different things like that. Mainly, I'll say it's usually inflammation that you'll see, right? Long-term pieces of this creates depressed inflammation. It can create all these big words, but really what it produces at the end of the day is anytime we're stressed, we end up getting sicker, right? We end up increasing our inflammation. We may allow germs in, and then our body may not be fighting those germs. There's all different kinds of things, and I'm sure everybody can probably remember a time that they got sick in some way, and it was due to because they were so stressed out, right? It might be that they had a big presentation coming up. They might have tests coming up. They might have that meeting with that parent that they're regretting and they're starting to think about it every night. And now they're getting stressed out about it. And then now they get sick because now it really revolved around stress and not necessarily the germs that got into our body. All right, so now this is another big words up here, right? Is the pituitary adrenal, right? The HPA axis. So whenever you look at this axis, right, this should be the flow to cortisol. And then the feedbacks, right? These feedback loops, which come back into that. What this is really showing is how it really kind of also gets rid of and increases those pieces, right? So whenever we get into these places, we have these abnormalities throughout this entire process. And then what happens is we have too much of it, so then we have these negative loops that come back to it, and that's whenever we start to increase our inflammation. That's whenever we start to increase all these other things and start creating a whole lot more problems for our process. Now, I'll say, kind of bringing it back to yoga again, right, is whenever we have these mind-body practices like Jenny did today, that helps us align this to where we don't have these negative feedback loops, right? Because these negative feedback loops are the pieces that cause us to reduce longevity on our lives. So let me say, does anybody have any questions about that? I know that's a little bit more medical and technical, I guess you can say, but I think the big picture is whenever we think about that, we have these cascades that happen throughout our entire body. The first cascade is a neurological cascade, which is your atomic nervous system being activated, and then it cascades down from the brain, right? You know, everything starts to shut down or speeds up or releases and does all that, and it all starts from the brain. And then you have your endocrinology system that ends up also starting from the brain and then building its way down, but also releasing those big hormones of adrenaline and cortisol and all these other things that it can also cause damage. And then we also have that immunology type of response as well that breaks down our immune system because we're stressed, right? So all these things are happening in our body simultaneously while being stressed. And then we come into this last phase, and then the goal is to align these down into here and decrease the amount of negative feedback loops. So that's probably a better summary than of me just talking to it. But any questions as far as this goes? Too easy. All right. So now we'll talk a little bit about hormones in action. So we're not going to talk about all these hormones. We're just talking about hormones that are related to stress. There's probably a whole lot more hormones, but we're really going to start to narrow down just a few of them. So hormone, right? Adrenaline. So we have, this is really our alarm hormone. adrenaline, adrenaline can be good and bad, much like Christina was saying, right? In just general, right? This is good and bad. If we release too much and we keep it released on a regular basis, then we are going to, have a lot of issues. Our heart's going to probably explode, just different things like that. But whenever it is activated, we have a faster heart rate. We have excess sweat. We have rapid breathing. We have increased strength. And then we can, accomplish so many different things whenever this hormone is activated. It is, if you had to simulate anything, it is, or replace it, it could be that you use caffeine, maybe sugar. I would argue that sugar doesn't replace adrenaline or can't simulate an adrenaline response. But I do think caffeine can. And I think there's other drugs, more hardcore drugs like cocaine, meth, those types of stimulants that can definitely simulate adrenaline responses. But overall, you don't really want to do that, right? Because whenever we add anything that can simulate an adrenaline response, it typically is something negative for our body. So that is something to kind of correlate, that every single time we have these adrenaline dumps is typically not the best for our actual physical bodies. Cortisol. That's absolutely right. Kristen, and she added in the chat that adrenaline dumping from stress also affects the serotonin levels. Now, what I'll say is the difference between what Kristen's talking about is the adrenaline dumping affecting your stress and the serotonin is if it's acute stress, that serotonin is not really being impacted, right? And what serotonin does is more of a emotion, I guess you can say emotion. Well, it really impacts depression. That's the way to maybe say it. It's on the impact of depression. If you have less serotonin, you're more likely to be depressed. If you have a normal amount of serotonin, you're likely to not be depressed. And if you have excess serotonin, then you actually become very sick and is very deadly if you have too much serotonin, and can actually shut down your body in certain ways. So that's kind of the serotonin spectrum. Whenever we do adrenaline and we have acute stress and we release, here I should probably go back a slide, and we release adrenaline, then that doesn't necessarily impact our serotonin on a large scale. It's probably going to drop in the intermediate whenever you have this acute stress, but it'll level back out. Kind of goes back to what we talked about with this cycle, right? Is an acute stress, right? If we came down here and you seen adrenaline at the bottom of this entire spectrum, then acute stress wouldn't have any impact on your serotonin. There wouldn't be any kickback that would ruin that. But now let's trade cortisol out for adrenaline and say you have chronic stress all the time. More than likely that chronic stress on these negative feedback loops for adrenaline will then decrease your serotonin, which will then increase your depression over time. So again, just something else to kind of think about how these different things impact people on a regular basis, and then think about how yoga could potentially impact or positively impact that entire scenario. And I think one way to kind of think about it from Kristen's example here of adrenaline dumping really impacting stress and serotonin levels in the brain is if you see somebody coming in and they may not be showing signs of adrenaline, right? They might not be on this high level, but they're always kind of depressed. They could also be doing adrenaline dumps, right? They could also be activating their adrenaline hormone a whole lot more than they really are, which is decreasing their serotonin. So what I'll say about that is what happens 9 times out of 10 in that scenario is they go to a doctor and then they put them on a SSRI. And in reality, whenever their adrenaline gets better, then they could almost move into this scenario to where they have too much serotonin and it can be deadly. So it's also something to kind of think about in the world of the people that we work with. I know I kind of went off on a little tangent there, but does anybody have any questions about any of that? Okay. So one thing that I'll say to Kristen's point is each one of these hormones impact other hormones, right? At the end of the day. And we would be naive to think if we have too much of something that wasn't natural in our body of a hormone, whether it's adrenaline, cortisol, serotonin, whatever it is, right? If we have too much of it, progesterone, testosterone, whatever it is, right? Estrogen, if we have too much of those things, it's going to cause negative impacts on our body. And if we have none of those, it's going to cause negative impacts on our body. It's like we have to find these exact little windows of tolerance that we have even for the hormones that we have in our body. So cortisol, right? Adaptation hormone, slower effect, energy supply, which often does get used and is converted to fat, right? So here we have cortisol, right? Impacts, you get too stressed out, it impacts sleep, impacts exercise, timing of meals, and body temperature. But at the end of the day, these are also areas that can help you relieve stress while also helping your body with cortisol. And high cortisol lifestyle, right? Multitasking, techno stress, and instant information, right? We're in this new life to where we get everything instantly. I think actually me and Brett was, or I think it was me and Brett, or maybe it was me and Josh was just talking about this today, is we live in a world to where we get everything almost instantly, right? If we want a book, we can either go on Audible and read that book instantly, or we can order that book and probably get it within 24 to 48 hours, right? And then with the technology, if you want to learn something, I don't know if you all know this, but I just learned this a couple weeks ago. So the largest search engine in the United States is Google. Do you all know what the second largest search engine in the United States, or world really, because if it's here, do you know what the second largest search engine in the world is? WebMD. It will be after this session for sure. So I'll go ahead and say it's YouTube, right? The second largest search engine in the world is YouTube. Google is number one, right? So literally Google has the number 1 and 2 search engines in the entire world. And if you think about that, right, we instantly want to go to YouTube and find out what we need to learn, and we want to see a video of it almost instantly, right? We live in this time. And then I'll add on to that, right, because I've already kind of mentioned it, but the political climate in the world and being polarized, we see that in our social media, right, which is on our hands all the time and everywhere, right? We can get all this information that causes us instant stress. And then I think it was Brett who said it, right? The lack of knowledge and the lack of all those things can cause us even more stress, right? So whenever we're in those areas, our lifestyles and the things that we have going on around us and all this multitasking that we are in this world doing now can cause us to release cortisol that can decrease our longevity over time if we're not doing things that kind of help our sleep, exercise, right? Eating healthy meals, focused on our body temperatures, different things like that. Yeah, no time for eating, sleeping, or taking breaks. I feel like everybody probably on the call can feel that, especially probably during testing season and different things like that. And then we try to relieve our symptoms, especially whenever we have high cortisol levels. We always overeat, right? We kind of see this person kind of looking a little bit abnormal compared to a regular body, although I'd say this person's normal by all means. But I think the image is more showing that we try to compensate by having high cortisol levels by overeating, right? We try to drink alcohol to help us sleep or feel less stressed. and then our cardiovascular exercise kind of decreases, right? And then whenever that happens, we become more stagnant, so we don't have to do that. So really, it would be increased cardiovascular exercise, right? Walking, running, high intensity interval training, and our yoga, right? Get better sleep, focus more on your schedule, things like that. And this is really where yoga can help, especially with the cortisol side of things. And then let's see, insulin. So here, I'm sure everybody knows that insulin is a major contributor to everything that we kind of do on a day-to-day basis, but having insulin resistance, right, is pretty, I shouldn't say pretty bad, but whenever we're in these phases and we are having a hard time maintaining our insulin and doing different things like that, we're typically probably eating more carbohydrated type of foods or carb foods. We're typically eating more sugary foods because we're converting all of our sugar to fat whenever we're activating this and doing different things. Insulin resistance in general, right? We gradually increase insulin in an attempt to adapt to high carb diets with chronic stress and lack of exercise. So if we see people who aren't exercising a lot, they have a lot of chronic stress, they're probably eating a high carb diet as well. But we could easily curve that a little bit, right? We could bring that back a little bit with some of the yogic practices that we have, make them more mindful of the things that they're eating, and kind of bring that back into it. Cells become less responsive, so body makes more, which is not good, right? Which leads into this metabolic type of syndrome. And we won't talk much about the metabolic syndrome in this 200-hour teacher training. That's probably more of a 300/1,000 hour of training. But really, if you want to get and know more about the body, I would definitely say look up metabolic syndrome and start getting familiar with that. And it's really not too many people acknowledge it, that you have that. That's even a syndrome that people can have. A little bit of controversy around it, but definitely something that you can kind of look into that definitely helps with understanding the insulin resistance and how that really impacts our glucose and those different areas inside of our body. All right, the adrenal insufficient, right? So this is kind of the same thing that I showed earlier with this negative feedback loop. Whenever we start to get into this, right, we have stress, it comes down, right, because we have this cascade, right, the neurological cascade, or the endocrine system has this cascade that comes down from the brain, and we have all these different glands that get activated to activate these different hormones. And then we have this metabolic effects that gets rid of those hormones. But if we have too much and we're staying in a high stressed environment, then those hormones and different things end up getting repurposed, and it's these negative feedback loops that we need to kind of get rid of, I guess you can say. Let's see, so this is that HPA axis. Does anybody have any questions about any of these processes? These hormones, what it really means? Okay. So what I'll say is the biggest part that we could take away from knowing all these hormones, right, and all these different things is you have a window of tolerance, and each one of these hormones have a window of tolerance. And if you have too much of those hormones or too little of those hormones, it's going to cause problems, right? And it could activate that sympathetic or parasympathetic nervous system, even just in your body from having those different pieces alone, right? And I think that's important for us to know, because I feel like yoga can help in those areas, right? Yoga can help slow down the mind. Yoga can help speed up the body. Yoga can help slow down the body, right? And all the different things that we need. And it can also help set intentions as you practice yoga that can help you set a different diet, that can help you cut out carbs, that can do all these different things that can increase or put those hormones back into their window of tolerance so that you're living a good and experienced life, right? So I think that's probably the biggest pieces to take away from this. So stress effects. So the HPA axis and immunology, right? So immune suppression from chronic stress has been shown extensively in animals. So there's all kinds of research out there that shows stress on mice and in particular other types of animals that they do, and every single time they create more stress, especially in mice, and the way that they create stress in mice a lot of times to show this is they end up doing things like putting them in a maze, but then all of a sudden if they're heading down one aisle of that maze, then they'll cut it off, right? If they're like almost at the end to where their food is, they'll cut it off and create this stress. And then they kind of see that, right? And then, and as they do that, we know for a fact that all these different areas impact the body in so many different ways. It causes your immune system to break down, right? It causes you to get overflowed with different types of stress or different types of hormones. And again, those hormones over time can cause different types of chronic illnesses. There is an increasing evidence that it operates similarly to humans or in humans, right? A lot of things about the human body we are still learning on a regular basis. Different parts of the brain we're still learning about on a regular basis. Different things that heal the body we're learning on a different basis, right? And different areas like that. So it's definitely something to always keep in mind as we're working with people is if we see people who are chronically ill all the time, and I don't mean ill like catching all kinds of diseases, but just like it's like that one person that gets the flu every single year, right? And then they get the flu 2 or 3 times, then they got COVID, and then they get all these things. More than likely they have a lot of stress in their life, right? And if they're not stressed, then probably all that sickness is going to cause them all kinds of stress. So physiological consequences of stress driven by these hormones. I won't try to say all those, right? Is increased heart rate. Anytime we increase heart rate, we can assure that, well, let me say it this way. Anytime we increase stress or increase heart rate because of stress, those are years taken off our life that we can't get back. It's increasing our blood pressure. Anytime we're increasing our heart rate, blood pressure is another one, right, that we can't get back whenever we have a lot of high blood pressure for a period of time. It can cause your heart to harden, right, the heart wall. It can cause different blood vessels to start to collapse. There's so many different bad things that happen with blood pressure whenever we increase it. And that is definitely something we should be thinking about. And stress is directly correlated with high blood pressure. Now, it doesn't mean that's the only thing that impacts it. It just means that stress is correlated to high blood pressure. Blood flow to muscles, right? This is important, especially if you don't work out, right? But if you do work out, it's important. But if you don't work out and you have less flow to your muscles, then those muscles are going to start hardening over time, right? And then that also creates different types of issues with our bones and other areas of our body. So again, blood flow is very, very important. Blood flow to skin, right? It will decrease that over time. And if we decrease blood flow to our skin, then our skin starts to die as well. And then we end up having different types of issues inside of our skin. And that's whenever you start to see flare-ups of different things on people's skin and areas like that. Metabolic rate, right? This is kind of both. We see it kind of go up, and a metabolic rate is also something like that window of tolerance, right? It needs to be almost exact, maybe not exact, but within that window that is unique to you. Digestion, right? We don't digest things as good as we do, and then we start to have that poor gut health, right? We see a lot of people with poor gut health that has a lot of stress because they can't really break things down anymore. Blood clotting and thickness. We definitely don't want to see that, right? And if you have increased blood pressure and you start to your heart starts to have, hardening of the heart walls and different things like that, and we're shutting down different blood vessels, blood clotting and thickness becomes a major problem at that point, right? Then you're going to be on blood thinners and all kinds of things at that point. And in reality, a lot of those things happened over time due to stress. blood sugar and glucose, right? We see people develop, later onset diabetes a lot of times because of this. I'm sure there's so many different factors, especially diabetes, but, blood sugar becomes a problem. Respiratory rate, all right, we see that as well. I'll say in high altitude places like we're in, if you are in high stress environments and then you have increased blood pressure and increased heart rate and all these other things kind of going on, and then you have a low respiratory rate and you're not getting enough oxygen, so then that means there's not enough oxygen getting to your heart, your brain, all these other places in your body. Hey! Sorry, y'all heard him. He's just going to go out there and bark now, but you all won't hear it. Let's see what else. Fluid retention, right? This is another thing that we see people retain water. So that one picture, I'm going to probably make y'all dizzy for a minute, but I apologize. But whenever you look at this picture, right? Whenever I look at this picture, and if I was looking at somebody like this right here that has small arms and different things like that, that's more than likely retaining water than it is anything, right? So now they're retaining water, so you can kind of see that they may have a high stress environment that they're living in because now they're retaining more fluids inside of them. Alertness, that's hypervigilance, right? So if we're going to be more hypervigilant, that's going to increase our heart rate, that's going to increase our blood pressure, and then create all these other issues, right? Respiratory rate, we can kind of see how even some of these are correlated and connected in their own way. Increase in breakdown in fats. Now, whenever we talk about fats, hopefully everybody understands that there's good fats and bad fats in your life and everything that you eat. This is a increase in breakdown of the good fats, which then allows the not so good fats to kind of connect to different things in your body. And then you kind of see that kind of bloated mindset as well with that same picture of that I just went back to for the fluid retention. Triglycerides, and LDL cholesterol increases. So for anybody who doesn't know these, anytime you have a lipid panel, typically, you're going to have these two pieces that are going to be on there along with your overall cholesterol. And anytime you're stressed, you're going to increase cholesterol. And when there is a such thing as good cholesterol, and the good cholesterol, you kind of want to be at a lower one as well. So whenever we increase cholesterol and triglycerides, so these triglycerides are really some of the fatty things that end up in your bloodstream that clogs things up. Really, this is probably sometimes, and some professionals think that this is worse than cholesterol if this is higher. So it's also something else to kind of think about as you're kind of looking at those pieces. But if we have this increased, which is increasing and clogging up your arteries and different types of blood vessels, and then we have poor oxygen getting to our heart and our brain and other areas, we have high blood pressure, our heart rate's through the roof. These are areas that can cause sudden death, right? Whenever we think about those areas. Cholesterol is one of those, the silent killers along with blood pressure, right? These blood pressure and cholesterol is two things that they call the silent killers in medicine, because you can have high blood pressure and never really know it. Besides maybe having a headache and maybe some nosebleeds, you might be able to notice those things. But also with cholesterol, you're probably not going to notice it outside of maybe chest pain, and then probably by that time it's too late. Well, I shouldn't say it's too late, but your cholesterol is high at that point. And then cortisol and DHEA ratios. So cortisol, like I said, is kind of the bad one, but DHEA is the good side of the hormone that you want more of. So you kind of have these different areas, and whenever you see an imbalance between these two, you kind of create dysregulation. And usually whenever you're kind of happy in these areas, you're activating this hormone. And whenever you're active and stressed and all that other stuff, you're activating your cortisol. And I have this grid that I should probably share with everybody. And maybe we'll go over this the next time we get together then. But it's called the renewal to depletion grid. And it breaks down that grid to where it shows the cortisol side of it and the DHEA side of it. And then it has the sympathetic and parasympathetic, and it kind of goes over that piece. But more importantly, what you can do is it's in a grid. So you can kind of pinpoint where you are on that grid and then appropriately get the right exercises and different things that you may want. It's really a heart math tool. Y'all may have heard me talk a little bit about heart math in here. That depletion to renewal grid is in heart math, and we can most certainly talk about that in the future. All right. What questions does everybody have? Sorry if y'all put it in the chat. I'm still trying to get this together. Everything just disappeared. No? Okay. So no questions. Any questions about the course in general right now, or anything that we can cover at this point? All right. Well, then I want to ask, so now I'm going to say something else and kind of change gears for a minute, is next year, we're going to try to implement this next iteration of what this culture can kind of look like here at District 2. One thing that we're going to do, hopefully, we're going to present it to Wendy and the ELT. And we are going to try to identify 3 schools next year that have high turnover. It doesn't matter what school it is, but we're going to be looking mainly at the turnover rates. And we're going to identify 3 schools. And inside of those 3 schools, we're really going to start developing different types of resources for that school. We're also wanting to implement coaching for the employees there. I must open up coaching. I know some of you all heard this spill already with the coaching course last week or the week before. But we want to have coaches who would be available. Doesn't have to be anything major, right? It might be like one session every other week or, something like that. It wouldn't be too strenuous, but we'd almost have like a calendar and people could sign up. Another thing that I was thinking is we could have people kind of partner up and teach yoga at one of those 3 schools as well. And what we're going to do, well, let me say the next part would be also we'll implement I think it's mindfulness and other pieces that we'll have there. We'll also work with EAP. For those who don't know, I have EAP going to CRA, or we have EAP going to CRA every Friday for the rest of the year. And they work with just the staff over there. They run 2 groups. So we're going to be looking at implementing things like that across in those 3 schools that we identified. They're not identified yet, because we're working with HR to find the turnover rates and the attrition rates and all this other stuff, and we're adding it to the presentation. Trying to think of anything else as far as that goes. Oh yeah, this is another thing. The Circle of Health. We will also have a component of self-care per month for each school. And then that way we can kind of have a true whole health culture at these 3 schools. That's really the goal. I'm also going to try to present this at the RISE convening on Thursday to try to see if we can get this funded and maybe pay for stipends. As of right now, I can't pay for stipends. I can't pay for anything. I can't promise anything. But if this is something that you all want to be a part of, let me know, because at the end of the day, thanks, Don. Let me know, because at the end of the day, this is a culture that we're trying to create. I know you all may have heard me say this before, but what I've really noticed in our school district is every time we talk about wellness, we want to go outside of our school district, right? And we want to bring something in to help that wellness. Well, what I would like for our district to be in the future would be that we have this whole health culture that's already doing all the things that we would want it to do. Maybe not all the things, but then that's what we bring in the RISE grant for, or that's what we bring in a Cigna grant for, or that's what we bring this in for, is to enhance what we're already doing, and that we look internally to answer our wellness. So if somebody asks, if they're reaching out to me to say, hey, we need to pay $5,000 to bring in these people to talk about, the reduction of stress, I'm probably going to reach out to now one of you all. I'll just say Dawn, since she's the one who volunteered. I'll be like, Dawn, I need you to go to CRA this week because we need somebody to talk about stress and maybe teach a yoga class. Would you be able to do that? And then we can do that internally without bringing that in, and then we could spend that $5,000 on increasing the training for people to be trauma informed, right? Or we can bring in training to, whatever it is, right? Increase our capacity to self-heal our district and the things that we want to do and accomplish the things that we want to accomplish. So anyway, I say all that to say that would be the next iteration. And if you all want to be a part of it, please let me know. The next thing I was going to say, especially about yoga, is the next phase of yoga too would be that next year I'm probably going to send out an application for people to start applying. And then on the 27th, what I would like is for the people who would be identified for next year to start the yoga program to potentially be there on the 27th. And then that way, whenever you all are doing your teaching evaluations, you could actually be teaching the next generation of people who will be doing it next year. I say generation, it's a whole year away. It's not a whole generation away, but you know what I mean? The next iteration, maybe that's a better way to say it. The next iteration of where we're heading. And then for the people who would like to volunteer too, especially if you're out teaching, is I would almost like to pull a committee together next year to start looking at this curriculum. And it doesn't have to be a full committee, a meeting on a regular basis, but maybe it's just a committee to where I give you all of the curriculum, or maybe it's like, I'll pick on Dawn again. If Dawn volunteered to be a part of this and she really hung on the Yoga Sutra section of this, then maybe it's like Dawn will take the Yoga Sutra slides and then, dive into them a little bit, correct them, say, hey, this would be a little bit more kid friendly. Hey, we need to maybe make this a little bit less for, K through 5 or, our elementary schools, things like that, right? And we can kind of start doing that. But that would be the next iteration for yoga. So then that way, at the end of the day, this is also a district-driven curriculum, district-driven everything, right? And where it goes next would be a district-driven thing and not just me taking a bunch of modules that I've taught here and there and all over the place and pulling it together for this class. Anyway, so I guess where is that landing with everybody? Does anybody want to go ahead and volunteer besides Dawn and Christina? But anybody else and Brett? I already told Brett that he was going to be doing this stuff, so it didn't matter. Just playing. But most certainly, if there's...
That is a true statement, but I've also pulled Charlie to help me with my brain schemes, and they're both amazing in helping people, so I'm in.
That's right. That's right. I mean, I feel like we have such a good district, great people, people who want to help. And I think most people here has heard me say this. The goal of these different things that we're trying to do isn't just to uplift our staff, but it's to really uplift our community, right? Because the goal would be to see our students engaging in yoga teacher trainings, their parents engaging in yoga teacher training, and then to see them potentially get jobs outside of here. Again, even if it's just them teaching a small class inside of their home and their garage, and then be able to uplift our community in such a way, right? That is truly the goal of what we would like to see. And I think Harrison School District and the community is a great community to do something like that in. So all right, well then I'll stop preaching at you, I guess, and we can definitely get off here. Oh, you can definitely think about this and let me know for everything next year, for sure. Sorry, I guess I should have started with that. We don't need any answers today. I haven't even got it approved to even do again next year. So, so most certainly, this is a preliminary type conversation, and I think just kind of seeing if people would want to do that. Hopefully, the real big goal would be that I'd be able to pay some type of a stipend on top of things, and be able to kind of do all this. But at this point, I have no idea where any of the logistics of that is going to be coming from. So, sorry. I thought I wasn't sharing that entire time. So y'all been looking at me in some little screen instead of us having a conversation. I apologize. Let me see. Anything else? that we can. Were y'all seeing my screen that showed the Colorado website too on top of it? Man, I'm sorry. I'm on my personal computer and everything. Um, so let me see. We can go ahead and get off here for tonight. I'll see y'all. I think it's in 2 weeks. I think it is the ethics class and professionalism class. If you have any questions about anything, whether it's the spreadsheet, just send me an email with the spreadsheet again. I'll correct anything I can to get that up to normal, but that way it'll at least give y'all a guide of kind of what to do. I would say try to have everything on that spreadsheet done, and we're going to continue probably adding. I don't think we're adding too many. I don't think we're adding any other assignment actually past this. So I think that is basically it. And then on the 27th, we'll meet, but have everything done by the 23rd. And then the 27th, we'll do the evaluations. If you cannot make the 27th, I think I said this at the beginning, but for people who may have joined late, if you can't make the 27th, let me know. There's already a group Monday that's going to get together Monday morning at the Family Success Center that's going to go ahead and teach, so we could easily do things like that. And or you can record a session. The length of the session really only needs to be about 10 minutes. I prefer it to be about 30 to 45 minutes. But you know, if you only get 10 minutes and you do your sequence and you get it done and you're like, oh man, that was only 10 minutes. If you feel like it addressed everything that you needed it to, submit it. It'll be fine. And then we'll go from there. But if you have any questions, reach out. We'll handle it that way. Outside of that, we're done. Thanks, everybody.
Hey, Charlie.
Thanks, Charlie.
Yeah.
If I get the recording for myself, because I am not coming back after our contract hours, because I'm going to my brother's graduation.
Oh, okay. Okay, I thought you were saying you weren't coming back in general.
No. I'm coming back for next school year. I'm just not coming back after the school year, like after Memorial Day weekend, just because we're gonna be out of town. For the recording, and you were talking about like the 8 limbs and the sutras, what would that look like, I guess, on a video? Like, am I just supposed to be acting like you are my student?
Yeah, absolutely. Right. So almost like Jenny, whenever she came to the video, she kind of said, she kind of started it, but then she came in and she kind of said, hey, our peak pose is going to be this. I think she said the theme maybe, right? You can kind of start it off with knocking those things out.
Okay.
And that could easily do it, right? You could say, hey, the theme of this practice is going to be don't overindulge, right? Which is a yoga sutra. And you don't have to name the yoga sutra or anything like that. You can literally say, kind of like she did, of that, just kind of being like, hey, it's to not overindulge, and we're going to practice this, and we're going to listen to our bodies. And every time we get too stressed out in our bodies, we're going to not do that pose anymore. However you say it, that's kind of
okay.
But that would be it. Let's see what I know we hadn't gone over the yamas and niyamas yet, which isn't that big a deal. You don't really need to add that in there because you pretty much add that in there because it's all ethical practice, right? So
yeah,
as long as you're not doing anything unethical in your practice, you're good, right? As far as nailing those down. But if you start off with like some type of mindfulness practice of saying, almost like Jenny did today, that was like I forget what she started off with, but I think it was a breathing practice. That knocks out one of them, right? And then if you do a meditation practice, almost like she did at the end of it, then that could knock out the meditation style practice. And then just have a general flow in between it, right? And just say, I think even Jenny said at the beginning, my peak pose today is going to be the humble warrior. You could even say something like that. So you don't even leave it up for interpretation. Like my peak pose will be warrior 1, right? And then we'll do it all back from that. And then that would really be your entire sequence.
Okay, cool. I kind of put in the sequence I want to do for one of the homeworks. I think it would probably be like 15, 20 minutes, maybe. Is that okay if I use the homework?
1000%. That's the whole point. Was
okay.
All the homework's built off of one another for sure. Was, we did the yoga sutras, studying those, right? I think we did 10 of them. And then the goal was hopefully that y'all came out of that with like one yoga sutra that kind of stood out to you, that could always kind of be that go-to yoga sutra. And then with the sequence, right, then you had the sequence and different things. Now we did mindfulness practices and different things like that. That's really just building off of one another. Okay. Yeah, absolutely. Don't reinvent the wheel if you don't have to, for sure.
Okay.
would you mind looking at that homework and kind of looking at that flow to see if you think that is a good way to get into my peak pose, or if I need to like change it at all?
Absolutely. Yeah, send it to me for sure. And that would be part of my feedback to you. And it wouldn't necessarily mean that you failed. Like if we did an evaluation and then I wrote in there that said, hey, maybe you could have integrated threading the needle to loosen up the shoulders before we went into Warrior One because, you're lifting your arms up, right? And I might say something
Okay.
like that. But you would not ever fail for something like that, right? Because that's a normal thing for for any yoga teacher to kind of still be evolving over time.
Okay. Cool beans. I will work on that and hopefully get it to you soon. I only have to do one teaching though for the
That's right.
final exam.
That's right. Just one
Okay.
teaching, and then once you're done with that, then you get your certificate.
Okay. Thanks, Charlie.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you.
Have a good day.
You too. All right.
Bye.
Let's see. Any other questions?
Hi,
Oh,
I
you're good.
just left you a email because I was at a district meeting, so I wasn't able to get all of the Zoom meeting. Is there any way possible I can get the recording of this sent to me to watch it?
Absolutely. The recording, we did record it today, so I'll get that to you right
Okay,
after.
thank you so much. I was able to catch some of the ending, but I was there from 4 to 6.
No, that's good. Yeah, I mean, I get it. We're just trying to make this work, right? So hopefully,
Yes.
hopefully you caught everything you needed. And really, I'd say I mean, well, it's probably all on recording, but I don't think I recorded part of that first part, which I think we've probably all recovered now at the end, is really just about the teaching, right? As
Uh-huh.
if you have that, you can record it, send it to me. It'll be
Yes.
the same as if you show up on the 27th. I may end up asking people to give me a RSVP for that 27th, just so I can do that. One
Okay.
thing that I did not mention about the 27th is that may also kick off our 150-hour Tai Chi training. So we may have a crossover between those two for next year. So we may have the
Okay.
future 200-hour yoga teacher trainings and the people who want to be a 150-hour Tai Chi instructor.
Okay.
Yeah,
All
so
right.
keep that in mind. And then the other classes that we'll be teaching next year will be like heart math. We'll have a mindfulness actual certificate. I know we have one kind of built in here, but it'll be a little bit more in depth of teaching mindfulness.
Okay.
And then what else are we going to have? We're going to have a hypnosis training. I don't know what your background is, but potentially hypnosis and then change management is kind of what I'm hoping to bring next year. I feel
Okay.
like that's a lot, but now that we're starting to get people trained, then I feel like people can start helping me a little bit here and there, like helping with yoga or helping with coaching and things like that.
Okay.
So
All
yeah,
right.
keep that in mind.
Well,
All right.
thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Have a good evening.
You too. You too.
Thank you.
Yep.
Good night.
Good
Are you
night.
able to hear me, Charlie?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, perfect. Okay. I did have a few questions as well about the homework.
Yep, go for it.
So I think I'm almost mostly caught up. The Yoga Sutras, though, there was 2 different forms I think I found. Was one of them supposed to be the one that was in the actual files right next to the Yoga Sutras video?
I think so, but what I'll say is on the spreadsheet, if you have the spreadsheet, I
Yeah.
put the links to the homework in each one of the titles. So Yoga
Oh, okay.
Sutras, you could just
Mhm.
click on Yoga Sutras and it'll open up the homework.
Okay, perfect. And then I'll go ahead and check that out. My second question was, I remember filling out some of the sessions. I don't know if I finished all 10 of them, but I definitely remember filling out some of them. Do you not have any record of that at all? Because if so, I can go back and try it again. But I could have
I
swore I remember
don't.
filling out a few sessions.
Well, what I'm running into is these forms are probably not the best way to use this, right? Because it does seem like that, especially like the Yoga Sutra one, I think is a big one, or the iRest one, right? We had multiple different things in there, and then you were supposed to practice and come back and journal. All that
Okay.
stuff is disappearing for people.
Oh no.
So
Okay.
yeah, so it's not just you. So if you send me an email telling me which ones you feel like you did, I'll just go ahead and mark those complete.
Okay.
Because I'm just kind of using this as kind of I trust you all. If you all say you did it, I think you did it, right? I don't think we're in one of those type of classes. So if you send me an email and I'll just go ahead and mark them off. What was the second part of that question? Now I forgot my train of thought.
Mostly just that, and if like, cause I don't know if I can't remember. It was so long ago. I don't remember if I did all 10 of them. I definitely remember filling out a few of the sessions though. If I only filled out maybe like let's say like 5 or 6 of them, what can I do to do the 7, 8, 9, 10? Do I just re-go into that form or like?
That's right, because with 7, 8, 9, and 10, whenever you look at
Uh-huh.
that spreadsheet, the
Mhm.
links are all at the top too. So whenever you click on session 8 or
Uh-huh.
7, it'll pop up just 7. If you click on 8, it'll just pop up 8. And then you can
Okay.
just go in and complete those. Yeah,
Perfect.
whichever ones you
Okay.
feel like you didn't do. And then whenever either way it goes, you can just let me know which ones you feel like you did. And I'll
Okay.
just check
Sounds
them
good.
off.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool. Yeah, I'm mostly caught up then. I'll just have to fill those out because I don't really remember if I did those or not. I can't remember. It was
No,
a
you're
while ago.
good. You're good.
February was
And
a hard
then I knew
month.
you weren't there whenever I came by, but did you get all your stuff and was everything in there? Because I never followed up with
Um,
you, see if everything
was
was
it the
in there.
wellness prizes?
Yeah, yeah.
Yes. Yep. I went ahead and checked
Okay.
through everything. Everything looks good. Yes. Thank you. I don't know if it was delivered earlier than that day, but if it was, I definitely was not aware of it.
No, it was not. It was sitting in the back of my car for about
Oh no.
2
Okay.
weeks.
Oh, you're good. I
Yeah.
totally
No, it most
understand.
certainly was because I was like, I'm going to deliver these, and then sure enough, like, I fell asleep or something. I don't know. I just never did. I had yours, and I think it was Oak Creek. I had both of those in the back of my car for like 2 weeks. So I
Oh, that's so
apologize.
funny. I don't blame you. It happens.
I
But thank
know,
you.
I
I
know.
appreciate it.
It's always like I have this good intention to go do that, and I'm like, oh, I'll do that, and then I go into the office, and then a meeting happens, and then a crisis happens, and then
Mhm.
again, I'm only part time at the district, so then I leave. I'm like,
Right.
oh, well, I'll just deliver that, tomorrow, and then I
Mhm.
fall asleep and I never do. So I apologize.
No, you're fine. Thank you for getting it to me. But yeah, you're good. We're not starting it till next week anyway, so that's perfect
Okay,
timing.
good. Okay, good. Okay,
But yeah.
perfect.
Okay.
That's what
All
I
right.
thought.
Well, I'll definitely check those links out and make sure I get everything up to date. But thank you. I appreciate you linking those.
Yeah, absolutely. And if there's anything that you need help with, let me know, and then we'll just go from here.
Okay. Sounds
All
good.
right. All right. Thank
All
you.
right. Yeah. Have a
All
good
right.
night.
You too. Bye.
Thanks.